Hey guys, first regardsman here, and today I'll be talking about a big potential upcoming problem for the release of the Techmarine class in Space Marine 2. Now, Techmarine will be the first official class added to this game, and is by far the update I'm looking forward to the most. While a Techmarine may not be like the most interesting class to me personally, I would prefer like a Librarian or a Terminator. Having a new class in a Horde shooter is one of the best ways to mix up gameplay, give people new team comp options, and we'll probably get a new weapon with it as well. Now, my big worry for the Techmarine in particular is that this game has horrific matchmaking on top of class restrictions, which means that two players cannot play the same class simultaneously. And when you have a new free class that is coming out like the Techmarine, this is kind of a disaster waiting to happen for launch because this game's matchmaking is already horrific. Like, I don't even think that's a hot take to say. Ever since launch of Space Marine 2, the game's matchmaking has been awful, server problems have been ever present, and they have been fixed quite a bit over the past 10 months, but it's still a huge issue. And like outside of direct bugs, I think it's probably the biggest issue the overall like quality of life that the game has currently, because you'll load into a match, you'll be sitting there for like a 5-minute loading screen, you'll pop in, two guys will be in the armory hall like making out, you're not even sure if they're AFK or not, and then you'll pop back out and like sit in the Thunderhawk waiting area, and then they'll come out, it'll be the same class as you, and you need to like fight for it, which is like a terrible gameplay experience, which is why a ton of people have moved over to like discords and such to like have a looking for group option and stuff like that, because this game has no way to actually filter your matchmaking, which is pretty horrific like currently, and on a new class release it's going to be awful. Because when you look at a game like Darktide with the Arbites release, everybody wants to play Arbites on launch, and Arbites was a paid for DLC. There were 400,000 Arbites class characters made on the launch of Darktide's DLC, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because Techmarine is going to be a free class option, and Space Marines are a far more popular part of 40k than like an Arbites and stuff like that, and usually class releases bring back a ton of players to the game. This will probably be like the single highest influx of players since like Siege mode and stuff like that, and I actually like Siege mode quite a bit, but I think Techmarine would be significantly better because Space Marine 2 actually does a pretty good job at class identity. Like, all the classes feel quite unique, they all feel pretty individual and fun to play, very unique play styles, and things like Assault don't play the same as Vanguard, and Vanguard does not play the same as like a Sniper, and Heavy is totally different from Bulwark. So I expect these Techmarines going to be the same in that regard and feel like completely different, so they've probably put a lot of work into it, at least like compared to the other updates. So this one really needs to bang. Like, Saber Interactive really needs to look at the issues in the game, because when you have a huge influx of players, you cannot have your game be broken on the launch, and you definitely cannot have an issue of like class restrictions like holding people back from actually playing the new character they want to play, because let's be real, 99% of players will want to play the Techmarine on launch, and it's gonna just be like filled up games of players like a giant red mark of like, I want to play Techmarine, I have to fight for it, and that's horrendous. And even if you have like a filtering system for your matchmaking, it's just not going to function properly, because everybody will still want to play the actual Techmarine class, and they'll be stuck to like solo lobbies and stuff like that. So I guess a solution here would just be like either lift the class restrictions for the Techmarine in particular, and leave all the other classes the way they are, which is like, I would say that's probably like an easy way to fix it, because some of the class perks like Heavies encompassing Aegis would be broken if there was like a total class restriction lift. You had like a 75% flat damage reduction for everybody. That would be pretty busted, but having like one class have no restrictions, at least for like the first month or so, I don't think that's a big problem. A lot of people want class restrictions gone, period. I'm not quite in that camp. I do think balance matters to some degree at a PvE game. Obviously not as much as a PvE, like it's okay to have some OP builds running around, but having like, 10 or 20 like OP combos could be a huge issue for like a game's balance, and game balance does matter to some extent, even in PvE. But my big worry for Techmarine is just that Saber Interactive has not properly fixed the matchmaking system in the game so far, and over time after time they'll release updates that feel a little half-baked, and it does kind of feel like there's a skeleton crew on this game, and like a lot of it has moved on to Space Marine 3. It's not that Saber Interactive is like the worst company ever when it comes to this, because I know Saber Interactive gets a ton of hate. People hate on the game director all the time. I've given them shit before too, but I think they are pretty good at communicating what they're actually working on. But when it comes to like hot fixes and releasing patches in a stable state, we've had like 3 patches in a row where like something is just broken, and like fundamental gameplay mechanics like parry bonuses and stuff like that, or like timers on supposedly endless siege modes that they haven't been able to actually fix yet, and things like invincible lictors that don't even let you push past like a certain wave because you just can't move. And they did fix quite a few of those, but Saber Interactive works at like a snail's pace. Part of this is because, you know, there's a lot of overhead at companies compared to like mod authors, but another part of this is that, you know, it feels like there's a skeleton crew in the game, to be honest, and that kind of sucks. It does feel like they kind of burned a lot of goodwill after Space Marine 2 popped off and was enormously successful, and they've been kind of like drip feeding content, and I'm not even sure how much of the content in this game was like pre-planned. I'm sure season 1 was like mostly like half made and stuff like that by the time the game came out. They just like did some finishing touches to it and like drip fed it as content on a monthly patch on top of balance changes, which probably take them the most time. And I imagine like season 2 might actually have some proper new content, and Techmarine has to be like the most interesting of all updates in my opinion, because classes are going to be something that the players interact with the most. Like, you know, it's not like a siege mode. Siege mode is a new game mode that, like, you know, it's an optional gameplay mode, but having a new class is basically, you're like, okay, here guys, you have 7 classes now instead of 6. You're going to see this new thing all the time, so it has to be fully functional, playable, fun to play, and has to be one of the best updates it can possibly do, because classes bring players back, and Saber Interactive desperately needs players back to Space Marine 2. They're trying to sell a new season pass. This game is a live service. It may not be like a super good live service, but we now have 2 roadmaps. It's kind of insane to say it's not, so I'm just hoping that they do have some foresight here for the Techmarine class. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is because, just on like the off chance they don't know, the more people that are talking about this, more people in the community that mention like, hey, we're worried about the Techmarine having a terrible launch, the more likely it is to be fixed, because Saber does listen to people. Like, they aren't that bad, to be honest. They got a ton of shit, like I said before, but like when it comes to like listening to community feedback, they might have a bit of like irritation towards the community sometimes, it feels like, but they do listen. They listen to some extent at least, and especially for something huge like the Techmarine release, I think they'll do a pretty good job at actually like hearing the feedback and trying to do their best to make the launch pretty satisfactory. I imagine there will also be a PTS server for this at some point, though to be honest, the PTS servers feel like they do basically nothing, because there were certain bugs like the parry bonus on block weapons that were completely broken in the PTS, and then it went live in patch 8.0 and didn't get fixed until patch 9.0. So like, they just left the bug from the PTS server in the actual main patch, and even though the bug in the PTS server was mentioned to them at like day 1, so it's just one of those things where like Saber has a very clear priority list, and bug fixing is not there unless it's like totally game breaking. And even though I play solo a lot in Space Marine 2, I don't only want to solo level my Techmarine, and leveling in Space Marine 2 is already not a particularly fun experience at times, not because leveling up your classes is that bad in things like absolute operations, but if you're like a new player and you're trying to grind out things like low level ops, the XP gain is pretty abysmal, and on top of that, you also have to level up your weapons, and there are probably going to be some new weapons for the Techmarine on top of everything else, and most players are trying to level off of hard siege currently. There's already a massive issue with like the base matchmaking on top of a ton of low levels going to hard siege and just trying to like grind out XP in the first 5 to 10 waves, and then they'll just like quit out of the match. So what you'll have is a ton of people will load in as the Techmarine, they'll try to play those first 5 waves of siege, drop out, and like rinse and repeat, and like the matchmaking is going to be absolutely flooded with Techmarines trying to play hard siege for XP, assuming they don't actually change anything. So that's kind of a big issue I want to bring up as well, and I'm really just worried about this because Saber Interactive, despite listening to the community at times, they don't always have like the best foresight on these things, which is why I wanted to kind of mention in the video here. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You know, I do love Space Marine 2. I do really look forward to like basically every update. It's just that we do kind of feel like we're drip fed content at times, and it feels like these season 2 pass, depending on how it goes, might just be there to like hold us over until Space Marine 3, which I feel like is the main purpose of like a lot of this continued support, is because they moved most of their focus towards the next game, and they're trying to like drip feed cosmetics and stuff like that until they can like pump out the 3rd game, which would be like a full live service or something like that. So we'll see what they do, but that's really all there is from me. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and as always guys, take it easy, and thank you for watching. Have a good one. Bye.